All right, today we are with Madison Lee of Madison Conner Designs, and I'm really excited for her to share the story of, the internal struggle of deciding whether to stay home or to move the business out into a professional space. So, Madison, thank you for joining us today to share your expertise. And we see like part of the decoration behind you, like
Yes.
the cute light, the bleeding heart. Love it.
I love it. It's my favorite thing.
I love it. So that was what, August last year?
Yes, I moved in August.
Okay. So first of all, let's like back up and tell us about Madison Conner Designs and how it started. And I know you have other things going on kind of beyond bridal alterations with the actual design portion. So talk about that for a little bit before we get into the move out.
Okay. I don't forget anything. Okay. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, Mimi, we actually have the same birthday. She was super creative and did all this kind of stuff for me growing up. So like, when I think back and I just think to my childhood and like high school years, and I just kind of threw a lot of projects at her with full faith that she could make it happen. And she usually did. So she really sparked my interest. She would make my pageant dresses, my senior prom dress. She helped me finish my wedding.
Wait a minute. You were in pageants?
Okay, just as a little girl. And then I did one when I was older. So she made my younger pageant dresses. We
need that in the podcast notes, photos of Madison in her pageant dresses as a kid. That has got to be so cute.
It was cute. I still have some.
Of course you do.
So she really sparked my interest. And then all through high school, I kind of thought like, oh, I want to be a dermatologist. I love skin. I love skincare, beauty, all things like that. And so I thought,
great skin. Yes.
Thank you. I thought this is where I want to go with my life. And then kind of my sophomore year, I was at a junior college and I thought, like, I started to question that. And so I was on the University of Alabama's website, just kind of seeing like, what are some other options as far as majors go? And I saw apparel and textile design and it kind of planted the seed. And like, cause I loved doing all those little creative projects with her and watching her and then being able to say like, this is exactly what I want and helping her get to that end product.
Yeah.
And so that kind of planted the seed. I knew I wasn't really settled on the dermatology thing. And then I sat in a chemistry class one day and I was like, why am I doing this? And so I just immediately got up and left and I went to my advisor's office and I changed my major. I don't even think I told my parents until it was done. And everybody kind of looked at me crazy, like, you're doing what? And so then I went off, I transferred to the University of Alabama. And I majored in apparel and textile design, and I graduated from there in 2017. And while I was there, when I came home on my breaks, like summer, Christmas break, I worked at a local outdoor lifestyle store here. And so after I graduated from there, I came home and I worked as a women's retail buyer. And I did that for about 3 years. And I really enjoyed seeing the retail side of fashion. So I got to travel, go to a lot of trade shows, like outdoor trade shows, boutique fashion shows. Like I really did enjoy that job. But I just knew kind of like in 2020, it kind of hit me like, I don't know if this is, I kind of knew going into it, this is not what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I think in my head, though, I was going to stay there longer, maybe until my husband's in PT school. So I thought, well, maybe until he's done, I'll stay here.
Yeah.
But then
because that wasn't like, you weren't like sewing, you were more like in the design, like the ordering and the, like you said, the retail side of it.
Yeah. So I would go to a lot of shows. I would see like fall, spring, summer lines, and then we'd buy it to stock the store.
Oh, cool.
And I really did love that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't stimulating creatively enough. So I knew like 2020, my mind started turning. I'm like, this is I'm itching to kind of do my own thing, I want to make my
that didn't take long.
Yeah. So I stayed there about 3 years. And then September 2020 is when I left there and started working from home full time. And when I started, I was like, I'm going to take alterations on the side. And then in the meantime, I'm going to build up Madison Conner Designs, and I'm going to do some custom wedding stuff, like party dresses, until I can like build that, until I can move into a space, like a retail shop or like an atelier, something like that. And then alterations just kind of took off, and like we're still waiting on. I have it in a similar way, just not exactly what I envisioned, but I mean, that's just how it happened. So
yeah. So because you obviously you started out of your home, and it sounds like it happened a lot faster than you anticipated, like the growth. So initially, how did you balance like the work with your home life? And like you said, like your husband was in school. So it's like, how did that all like, how did you balance the two?
Yeah. So and I don't know if I did it well or not, to be honest with you. I like to think I did.
You survived, so something happened, right?
Yeah, we were in survival mode. So we made it work. And it was not a bad setup at all. Thankfully, our home is small, but it's just me and my husband. And so it's 4 small bedrooms. So we were able to have like our master. I had a little closet room, my work room, and then like another guest room / office. And so we used my closet for fittings. And so I had my pretty racks of clothes, my dresser, my big mirror. And so people were in there with all of my things. I don't think anything got swiped, but who knows? And then I had my work room. And then, so people would have to walk all the way to the back of my house to go to the fitting area. And so I didn't love that, but I'm a pretty tidy person. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I just tried to make sure like light music, smells nice.
Right.
No dirty dishes everywhere. Things are picked up, so that wasn't that big of a deal. And eventually once it started growing, we had to get a big rolling rack because my closets couldn't hold anymore. Put that in the living room, and I hated that. So we ended up getting rid of our guest bed.
In the living room. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's just a small rental house right now. So and then we ended up getting rid of our guest bed, moving racks in there, and so eventually it just started growing and growing, and we couldn't fit anymore in there.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea that it took up like 3 rooms of your house by the time you left.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I know like a lot of listeners, they have the home routine set and it's working out really well. And they have that balance. And, in recording this too, like I understand that there are some people who they're so happy in home, it's working great, and there's no need to move out. And like, that's totally a thing. And I think that represents a big demographic of the trade.
Yeah.
But, on the other hand, if there's a point that if you do want to continue growing, it's like kind of something has to give because you couldn't give up your master bedroom. And I think that was like the next one to go. So,
yeah. And I would say like, I do a little bit and envy those people that have that separate kind of setup that are content in where they are, because sometimes we look at my profit and loss and like, that's a big chunk of overhead that is not going to my bank account, know? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you kind of have to weigh
your
pros and cons there.
Right. So when it came to, so let's kind of go back to, because I want to talk through the whole like decision-making process, because I know this is a big decision when you get to that point, and like, there's a lot that you have to think through. And like you said, like the cost is a big thing to consider, and obviously it's worth it when you do it, but it's not like an easy decision to make. So when things were getting busy, did you ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I could limit the business coming in? Was that ever an option? Or were you like, no, I just want to keep going until it like reaches my personal capacity? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, I wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that this was what I wanted eventually. It just happened quicker, thankfully. But yeah, I knew that like working from home was not the long-term plan for me. It for me mentally, it was not good. I felt like I was going stir crazy. There were some days where I would get in my car to drive somewhere, and I'm like, when's the last time I drove somewhere? I wasn't leaving, especially during my busy season. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know, like for me, it was tough. I think more so like for like my husband, like he didn't really want to be around because we had a smaller place too. So he didn't even want to be in the house when I had brides in, because he's like, I don't want, them to think that there's like this creeper, like, and it was also the particular setup of the way of our floor plan, you know what I mean? Like not every house is like that, but so that kind of got weird. And I know it was almost like intrusive for his lifestyle. And then I remember always feeling so aware of like the smells and like what I would cook for dinner. And like we'd meal plan based on like, okay, a bride's coming tomorrow. So, no onions, bacon, fish, like whatever.
Yeah.
Have the list.
Yeah. I fried chicken one night and it's carried over into the next day. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I apologize the whole next day. I was like, well, I'm taking that off, never doing that again.
Yeah, seriously, it's like your food prep gets involved.
Yeah.
But I can also see that if you came to a point before it took over multiple rooms, that maybe you could put a cap on it. And then if somebody were in a situation where they didn't want to move out, I guess you just have to get to a point where you kind of raised prices, taking in fewer clients. And then there's kind of that like, well, where's the limit with that? Since, like, does your location, if you're working out of a home without overhead, does that affect your prices and all that stuff? So we're going to get into that next. But so once you realized that like it was time to, you've reached max capacity and you got as much out of your house as you could, like what were your first steps when it came to even looking for a space or considering it?
Yeah. So I think we actually had a call like at the beginning of that process.
Yes.
You kind of pushed me, just start looking, just open your mind to it. And so I think there was like a period of a few months where we had started, my husband and I, just to like notice signs, call some places. So we started gathering, like we had no idea what to expect as far as like, how much is this going to cost a month?
Right. You don't know until you
start. How big of a process is this? Like, and so we started getting some information and we couldn't find anything really. And so, how
close did you, like, what was the vicinity of where you looked? Did you have like a specific radius or did you want to be in a specific like neighborhood or?
Yeah. So our city is kind of like, your city's northeast side. I knew I wanted to be on the west side. The northwest side of the city that we're in. So that which is pretty much where we live. So within maybe a 10-mile radius of where we're currently living, which is pretty centrally located. So
where like my shop was literally like half a mile from our old house. And then when we moved, it was like, well, now I'm farther out, but the location, like even once we moved, the location's still perfect. You know what I mean? So it's like, you do kind of want to keep that in mind, that where you personally may live is going to change, but your business space, as long as it's a great, like central location. But when something does happen, when you're like, okay, let's just look, let's just like make the phone calls, or like you said, figure out how much it's even going to cost. Or once you're in the physical space and feeling what that's like, was it easier to imagine like, oh, my business could move out and do this?
Yes. Once we started like looking in windows and visualizing, or like just looking on pictures online, you can kind of see like, okay, this would be this space. I could put a curtain here, or that room could be dedicated to this certain thing. So when I walked in the space that I'm in now, it was like immediately I knew this room is perfect for my fitting area. This room is where my machines are going to go. My cutting room, couch would go great here.
Yes. Yeah. Was this the first place that you went into? Or did you tour any other places?
No, I think this was the first place I went into.
Wow. And how did you find, like, was it based on like price, or did like your price really narrow down what you could even see, or how did you pick that spot?
Definitely. Okay. So this was probably, I wouldn't say it's the lowest thing we saw, but it was not the highest for sure. Okay. Some of the higher places we saw were just like one big, box that had nothing furnished, no walls, no nothing. So I knew I'm going to have to do a lot to make that what I need. Yeah. And then we just saw pictures of a lot of other places that I just kind of knew immediately, like, that's probably not going to work for me. The price was out of control for me. This was the first place I was able to get a key and actually walk into. So that pretty quickly, whenever that happens, I feel like for myself, the ball starts rolling, I start spiraling. It's hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
So that's probably a great thing. Yeah.
And it is like, I remember when you first like showed like the walkthrough video, and I could not believe how beautiful it looks. Is it a new building, or was it just recently like refinished?
No, I mean, I think like maybe they put floors in for the last tenant and painted the walls, but it's not new at all. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It was so clean. And because my space, I remember when we were looking, there was like another place closer to downtown, and I knew I didn't want to be like downtown Olympia, but the layout was really disjunct and I just couldn't picture it. And then I found this space for the same price, and it was like, okay, this is perfect. And I think, I can see myself here for the foreseeable future. Obviously, when you're renting, as much as we don't want to think about like changing locations, that's still an option. So like you could be here for the next 5 years. And then after that, if you feel like you need to expand further, you can, but that's another conversation for another day. But sometimes when people think of moving out, it's like, this is permanent and I'm going to be there forever. And it's like, it could just be even like a 12-month lease or something, or kind of see how that shakes out. So once you found the spot and you're like, this is it, we can talk about how you decorated later, because it's really cute. And there's that little special element from your Mimi. Is it Mimi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can come back to that. How did you resolve the cost? Like, how did you work through that? I think that's probably the biggest piece for everybody thinking of this decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty quickly, whenever we started calling around, and then you kind of do the math backwards in your head. Okay, like this is my average bridal ticket. This is how much business I've been getting a month. So how many brides or whatever would I have to take on to make this happen? And so like we knew that number, and we knew that this was attainable for that number. And then I knew going into it, like we had a little bit of a lump sum that left over from taxes. We had held too much out. So we kind of had that little bit of cushion. And if we didn't have that, then we would have said like, hold on, let's save. Yeah. So we have a few months of rent saved.
Because then too, you need to pay for like the furniture when you first move in, and like the window furnishings. And it's like, there's so much more than just like paying your first month's rent.
Oh yes. Like in the beginning, I felt like I was handing everybody $100 checks. So it's like everybody needed $100 for something. Or like the fire marshal had to come in, and we had to buy certain fire extinguishers and signs. And I'm like, no, it's just not here already.
Yeah. For real. That's great. Just automatically come with a fire extinguisher. Yes. Yeah.
And like your husband and things like that.
And your husband is, he's like a numbers guy, right? I feel like I remember you telling me that. Yeah. So that definitely comes in handy when you have somebody who gets excited with you and wants to put the pieces together, because you need to probably figure out how many brides is going to pay the rent, and then how many brides is going to help me live a life after I pay rent and like make a profit off this thing.
Yeah.
So tell us how the business has changed or shifted since you've moved in though.
So I would say it's definitely gotten much better. My mental health is better. I get to look outside and I see cars driving on the road. I can like hear my neighbors beside me. We share a wall. And so that's just overall, I feel more confident just in myself because I'm leaving every day. I take more pride in like what I look like, just because I'm not home, Right. So that's just I just feel way more self-confidence in myself, which I think affects the business.
Wow. Yeah.
I feel more empowered to charge what I should be charging, because I have a more elevated space, more elevated experience. I feel like I take more time with my brides or any customer, because I'm not thinking to myself subconsciously in the back of my head, like, okay, whenever they leave, like I get my home back. I get to be by myself again.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big thing too.
Have you noticed a change in the type of clients that contact you? Has that shifted at all, or?
Yes. And I've been trying to think about that. I was thinking about that like earlier this week. Is that because of I've implemented packages a few months before I moved in here. And so I'm like, which one affected that more? And I think it's probably both,
Yeah.
I do.
And you also just touched on like your who you are shifted a little bit too. So that probably
Yeah.
affected, I interrupted you though. I got excited.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
it's fine. I was just, well, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, you were saying the packages and then the second thing.
Oh, I was going to say, I do feel like clients respect my time more. They view me more like not all my hours are work hours, since I have a physical space that's separate from my home.
Yes. Yeah.
So like when I was home, I would get a lot of like, hey, can I pop in and do this? Like, what about a Sunday afternoon? And then I felt bad saying no to that. Or if I'd said yes, I would regret it. Because I'm like, why did I do this? Like,
just because I'm here doesn't mean I'm here for you. I'm living in my house. So
yes. And I also feel less guilty when I am home. Because there's not a room a few steps away that has dresses full of pins that I need to get rid of, you know?
Yes. Oh, that is so good. Yeah. I think I told you the story that I had. This was when I was still working from home, and I had a mother of the bride message me. Duran and I were camping, so that's why I didn't get the texts and the calls. There were 3 texts and 2 voicemails when we came back into service. And this mother of the bride had been parked outside of our house, calling me and texting me like, hey, I'm just in your neighborhood. And then I rang your doorbell and I see your car, so you should be here. And I just wanted to check to see how the dress is coming along. And I'm like, ugh. And I know I'm not the only one who's had that experience. You know, when you live from home and people are like, oh, they're home. So I'm not inconveniencing them because they're already living there. So I know that that problem could be solved in other ways than renting a professional space, but that's one less thing that you have to worry about, like you said. And I love how you mentioned not feeling guilty for not working. And a friend of mine just recently found a space. We were talking about how their routine is going to change. And did you ever find yourself when you were home, like doing a lot of really late night sewing because it was there?
Yes. Especially during my busy season. Well, I also thought like, I think I took on way more because I felt like I can't charge what I should charge for this because people are in my home, you know, like for some reason in my head, I thought this is less than what it needs to be. I'm not giving them a good service. And that's completely false. Like I did great.
Your work was the same work
there that I do here. What was your question again? Oh,
I was saying how, because I know when I worked from home, it was like, I would wait until nighttime to like start, or I would procrastinate even more. And then, so this gal who just got her new space, she's like, I'm just nervous and I'm not going to get things done because I get so much done at 1:00 in the morning. And I was like, you will get it done. Your hours are just going to shift. So have you noticed that?
Absolutely. Because there's not a dishwasher that needs to be unloaded. There's not laundry that needs to be folded. You know, like I have to leave that in the morning.
Yeah.
And I know like that's going to happen later. Like nobody's walking through my house anymore. So I can leave that on the couch or on the bed if I need to.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I know when I'm here, I'm like, I need to get this done because I want to go home later.
Yes.
So yeah, I would get very distracted at home. And then also I would just get bored sometimes because I was in the same, which I'm in the same setting every day, but it's just different because you're not in your home. You know, you're not getting out of bed, getting ready, and then going into another room.
Yeah.
So I would like Marco Polo my friends and just like babble on and just tell them like about my day. Whereas like I don't do that here quite as much because like I feel like I'm around people. Even though I am still by myself a lot, I just feel like I'm in a different setting, more professional setting. So like, I feel like I work quicker, more efficiently for sure.
Yeah. And I know like when you are working from home, like, especially if you have a family involved and you're working around your family schedule, that's how you create your business hours is like, hey, these are my hours that I see clients. And then I have these hours when I get the work done and it's going to fit around my kids' schedule, my husband's schedule, whatever. If you have loud neighbors around their schedule or whatever. And the same thing happens when, it's just a different work environment. So you're going to create different habits and have different rewards. Like you said, like getting in the car and driving home is your reward, as opposed to, I think I'll just leave my sewing room and get distracted outside of the house somewhere. That's a different reward system,
Yeah.
So, cause I think that can be a fear of like, if I have the advantage of getting stuff done whenever I want to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that is a blessing, but it also shouldn't necessarily hold you back from exploring other options.
And I mean, I have had late nights here as well, but I mean, if I need to have a really late night because I've overdone it, I've overloaded myself, then I have a machine at home, or I'll take a machine home. Like, I'll make it happen. My husband will come hang out with me for a few hours. Or, sometimes you just have to move people because you can't get it done,
Right.
So,
I know. I hate that feeling.
We've all
like my worst case is when I have to get up really early and go to work early. It's like, that I have to get something done if I'm at my shop by 8. Like, that rarely happens, but then that's how I get the stuff done. What time does your day start? I'm always interested.
Okay. So it used it used to start around 9 whenever I got here, whenever I moved into this space.
Okay.
And even at home, I would kind of have a slow morning. I kind of got in the bad habit of sleeping a little bit later. But now my mom has started working with me, and she's an early riser. And so I feel like, okay, I need to get her earlier. So now I get here at 8.
Oh my goodness. And your mom gets there at
8? She gets there sometimes at 7:30.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of was like, I'm not getting here any earlier than 8 o'clock. Like, this is just too much for me.
Oh my word. Yeah. I love my mornings at home. And so, and my husband makes fun of me because he's like, you get up and then you don't do anything. And I'm like, I know, like, I get up and then I just love to like sit and read and have my coffee and like, just like have a slow morning. But those are I feel like those are my most like productive hours going to waste. But I'm like, I can't help it. So usually I don't roll into work till like 10:30, 11.
Yeah. Well,
but golly, 8 a.m. Maybe I need to go in earlier. Oh gosh.
If it's working,
self-reflection.
I would love to go into work at 10,
Yeah.
One day, maybe I will.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the dream.
Come to the late morning side. And but I know like in like the middle of summer, it's like, I don't have that luxury. Like, there are definitely some times where it's just like, okay, just gotta, because then the end of the day will come sooner. If I get in there earlier, then it's like, then I will leave sooner and enjoy dinner and then not be cranky when I come home. So okay. So this was really helpful because you really helped kind of clarify what goes into the decision making. And it doesn't need to be this overwhelming, like, pipe dream, like, that you can't put into small steps. Like, everything is doable is kind of what you just shared. But do you have like a final piece of advice to listeners who are thinking of or entertaining the thought, or maybe they're thinking about it, they haven't said it out loud yet?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you need to make sure that you can handle it financially. You don't want to be irresponsible. So do your research and then work backwards, like we were talking about earlier, from that monthly lease or rent, whatever your payment is, work backwards from that. And then I would also say, make sure that you know how to manage that well. And if you don't know how to manage your money well, you don't feel confident in paying that every month, because you're not just paying rent, you are going to have to up your insurance. You're paying for you're adding on some costs there, new expenses, internet, electricity, water, all those things, if it's not included in your rent. So making sure you can manage that well. And so for me personally, I did not feel confident. My old job, I managed to budget expenses like somebody else's money every day buying for a store. But for myself, that's not where my money. Yeah, that's not where my strength lies for myself, and I know that. And thankfully, I have a husband that just loves a spreadsheet, and so I trusted him. I can trust him to like be my wise counsel in that aspect.
Yeah.
But if I did not have him, I think it was very important to have somebody like that, a bookkeeper, an accountant, somebody that you feel confident and trusting that is going to help you manage that along the way. Right. And then if you feel okay about all of that, then I think my next thing is like, if you are okay in your house, like space wise, then think to yourself, like, is this working for me, for myself, like mentally? Is this benefiting me? Like, am I happy here? Do I enjoy my day here? Do I feel like I can grow here? Because for me, all of those answers were no. Yeah. And when I thought about myself in a space, they became a yes. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think when I come in every day and I unlock the door, it just is a new reminder to me of like, this is mine.
Mm.
and I can take this as far as I want it to go. And it's just is so motivating to think like, I built this and my name is on the door right now, but one day I want my name on the building.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So I just think like, do you need like a little motivation to get to that next step? Like, is this going to motivate you to continue to grow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool that like the space is now like a stepping stone. Like what do you want to do with the building? Like what's in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So I would love to grow the custom side of things, or like a small batch bridal line, formal wear line. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have the time now. And that makes
Right.
me a little sad because I have so many ideas in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I'll do a custom for somebody, but it's never what I would want to do for myself, you know?
Yes.
So I want to have the time and the space to be really creative and push out something that has my name on it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Maybe the next subject that you'll host is how to hire. Like once you have this team under you, you can come back and talk about how you hired everybody.
Yeah. Well, I have my mom now, so it's going good.
Oh, I know. I wanted to hear about, and I know I don't think you're in the same room. Maybe you are with your Mimi sign.
I'm not. Do I need to go in there?
No, you don't need. I mean, just send me a picture and I'll put it in the show notes or whatever so people can see it.
Yeah.
But tell us that little backstory because that is so cool. I got the chills when I first saw that.
Yeah, I left that out. So my grandmother is a great seamstress. So whenever my dad was in high school, like all his peers, their age people, up until I was in school, like they would kind of go to her, go to Miss Jackie. She'll get you fixed up. She even used to work at Joann's back in the day.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Joann's.
Yeah. And I remember she drove a bus. So she'd make like all these little, for her kids, she'd make like little stockings with candy canes in them that was one of my first projects I remember helping her with for her kids on her bus. Mm-hmm. But anyway, for a little tip.
Mimi, I did not know that Mimi was a bus driver. That kind of changes everything. That's awesome.
So for a little time period, she had an alteration shop. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think it says Special Occasions and Alterations by Jackie. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, we were in my pa, they're Mimi and Pa. So we were in my pa's barn and he had it propped up in there. And he was just showing like, oh yeah, this is Mimi's old sign. And I never knew that she had an actual space outside of her home that she worked in. She didn't do it for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I think the people side of things wore on her a little bit. She didn't like having people just come in all the time. She took a lot of walk-in and like.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, he had held on to her sign all these years.
That is so sweet.
That was on by the side of the road and it's huge. And so I knew when I moved in here, that's going to be such a cool art piece. Mm-hmm. And so I had my uncle, he's a great woodworker. He helped me clean up the edges, and he figured out how to hang it on my wall. And then she finally got to come in and see it like a month or so after I moved in. And so that was really cool because I didn't tell her. It was a surprise. I told my mom,
that is awesome.
I've got to get this out of your barn, but don't tell Mimi. I want her to wait until she sees it on the wall. So yeah. That was really cool.
My goodness. Okay. I did not know that part of the story. That is awesome. I just remember when I first saw it, like, oh, that's so cool. And then without even knowing that it was like part of like your family history. So
yeah. Also, I feel like, I get, because a lot of people think of a seamstress and they think someone older, like their grandmother, my grandmother sews or whatever. Yep. And so sometimes people come in here and their moms will be like, well, how did you start doing this?
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's a really quick, I'll say, well, I got interested through my Mimi. She sparked my interest and she taught me a lot. That's actually her sign hanging in the lobby. And that's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. It's like, I've got this older approval. And then I hit him with, and I have a degree in apparel design.
Yeah. But first Mimi. So she was first step.
Yeah. It's like, they're more impressed by that.
Yes. Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Jackie approved. Well, thank you. I'm sorry that I made you go backwards to tell that story, but I'm really, really excited to get this episode out. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And and especially the key turning, like it's more than, when you move out, it can be just the next step. It doesn't need to be the final step, but it's like, then it opens the doors to other things. So I cannot wait to get this information out. And then where can our listeners find you to follow more about Madison Conner Designs?
Oh, yay. Okay. So on Instagram, at _Madison Conner _ and it's Conner with an ER, not an OR. And same thing on Facebook, I'm Madison Conner. And I have a TikTok, it's Madison Conner Designs, but I'm not very active on there. And then my website is also just madisonconner.com.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will have all that in the show notes so people can find you and follow along. Yay. Thank you.
No, thank you.